Mayor, you said this was going to be your last hurrah. I somehow doubt that. Ken and I have a few questions for you. If we have time, we'll open it up to the floor afterwards. I want to start with something that both of you touched on. Walter, I think, mentioned that the Lieutenant Governor worked as MTA chairman, appointed by Governor Carey when the mayor was in office. And actually, the mayor also reminded me that they ran against each other.
Right.
And he not only
reminded 3.5%.
He reminded me not only who won, but what the percentage of the vote
More
was.
than Jay Golden.
I have to point out, Ed, that the New York Observer endorsed me.
That's a long line of successful endorsements from the New York Observer. During that period, though, there was this sense of crisis, of financial crisis, but there also was a real sense of shared sacrifice in the city. Now, 30 plus years later, we're in what's arguably a worse financial situation and no shared sense of sacrifice. The Lieutenant Governor touched on that a little bit, but why do both of you think that is, and what could break that logjam?
Okay. In 1975, without any forewarning at all, the banks, for understandable reasons, advised the governor, I happen to have been the only one with him at that moment, that they would no longer underwrite the notes and bonds of the city of New York. And there was therefore the threat of an imminent absence of cash with which to pay the fundamental expenses of government. And that was a crisis that commanded the attention of the media, front page story every day, and it continued so pretty much until over the next few years, and when the city under Ed Koch adopted a structurally balanced budget in accordance with GAAP, got the expenditures in line with the revenues, another way of saying the same thing. That was the major news story, and it was a major news story around the world, and you had to be deaf, dumb, and blind not to know it. And therefore, the political system had little choice. And furthermore, the city had the ability to file a bankruptcy petition, which would have abrogated all of the existing collective bargaining agreements. And therefore, every union did whatever they had to do to avoid that, because that would have been so much worse. And had the city gone into bankruptcy, the banks that had underwritten all of that paper without any due diligence would have been sued. I'm not suggesting they would have been found liable, but they wouldn't have liked the accusations in the litigation, and they couldn't afford to take the risk of going into bankruptcy either. And because you had people in politics like Ed Koch and Hugh Carey, that was an ever-present threat that got everybody to behave less selfishly than they ordinarily did. So that's the answer to your question. I mean, it had a lot to do with the caliber of people in political life at that time, but it fundamentally had to do with the fact that there was a risk of running out of cash. And so far, despite how bad the numbers are and how fundamentally scary the structural deficit is, we're not out of cash. The state has extraordinary ways of selling assets and hypothecating revenues to come up with enough cash to get to tomorrow, even though all they're doing is kicking the can forward, as I said, and the next generation of taxpayers are going to have to pay a fortune for it. And that's the difference between the late 70s and today.
What's required, I believe, of those who are running the state government and any other layer of government is for the person in charge to say to himself, herself, I don't care if they don't re-elect me, I can get a better job. And that was my credo. I said to myself, I have confidence in my abilities, and I'm going to do the best I can. And there are people who are better capable than I am, but they didn't run. And of those who ran, the people thought that I was the best, and they may be right, they may be wrong. I'm going to give it my best. And if I'm not able to get people to follow me, they'll get somebody else. But I'm going to do what I think is in the best interest of the city at that time. What I hope and I believe is the fact that Andrew Cuomo has the same credo. I believe that. I believe that he's got confidence in his ability to get a job if he were to leave the gubernatorial position and to do what's right. And I'm a Democrat and I've crossed party lines, but I love being a Democrat, and I think we're the better of the two parties for a whole host of reasons which we won't go into at this point. But there are some Republicans who are terrific. The governor of the state of New Jersey, he's a poster boy. And I just read an article, one of the papers, about the fact wherever he goes, he's lauded because he tells the truth. I mean, the truth is so important, and people recognize it. And if you have the ability to say, this is where I stand, you don't like it, shove it. And that's what he does. That's what the newspaper article said. And he gets applauded. And that's how Andrew should conduct himself, and every other official at every other level of government.